welcome back to the studio. My name is Ed Haynes, and joining me today in the studio is Ant Haynes.
Thank you for having me.
We are here to introduce the first two workouts of the 2021 Process Programming Summer Throwdown. We have a two-part event to kick us off. And in normal process programming fashion, we have two demo athletes who will be taking us through the workout. While myself and Ant kind of talk about strategy, give you just some general commentary, and just some general tips and things to think about when you go ahead and execute the workout yourself. Now, the workout is as followed.
It is a 20-minute window on a running clock, counting up, of course. In the first 15 minutes, athletes have a 15-minute time cap to complete 50 calories on the rower, followed by 50 alternating dumbbell snatches, followed by 40 calories on the rower, and 40 alternating dumbbell clean and jerks. At the 15-minute mark, athletes will then have a 5-minute window from the 15 minutes to 20 minutes to build to a 1 rep max thruster from the floor.
Well introduced, Ant.
Thank you.
A couple of things to think about. Remember, we have 4 divisions here in the Summer Throwdown, so make sure you check out your appropriate division and you have a look at the rep and load scaling according to what's been prescribed for you. If you have no idea which division you sit on, remember we've created some prerequisites. These are the same prerequisites that we use for our Live, Perform, Compete and Elite training programs here at the Process Programming. So simply just go have a look at those prerequisites, find out which category you sit on. And of course, if you don't know, you can always just reach out to us as a coaching team and we can help point you in the right direction. So I think without further ado, let's get this video underway. So an important thing to recognize is that the athletes can start on the rower here. Yep. So, you know, for those who are doing this, make sure you have your foot paddle set up, make sure you have your damper setting set up. Of course, make sure your camera is set up, you're ready to rock and roll. Now remember, everyone competing in this throwdown will need to submit a video. We'll be going through full video reviews of everyone. If you would like to have a judge to help keep you accountable on your movement standards, or, you know, just hold you to your rep count.
They can also change it, start your rower up as well.
And they can actually help you, start your row every time you transition in and out. Then, of course, you can do that, but you will need a valid video submission. Okay, so, and this workout starts off with a long row. It's kind of a chipper with a descending rep scheme as we move through this workout. Obviously, the dumbbell movement changes when you get to the second piece. What are some of kind of your thoughts in terms of how you would approach the start of this workout?
I think it obviously depends. If you can look at the two movements and neither of them are really going to bottleneck you. For those that have done the CrossFit Open, you have some pretty tangible workouts that you can actually relate back to. Obviously with the CrossFit Open, that workout, the box jumper, burpee box jump overs, and the dumbbell snatch finished with a horrible 50 dumbbell snatches. Now if you got through those dumbbell snatches unbroken, then this is probably looking like an unbroken style workout for you if you can manage it. I think for a lot of people, they will be able to push the pace on both exercises. It's definitely about fast transitions of the dumbbell between hands, but also between the two movements as well.
In terms of row pace here, obviously that's very individualized.
Yeah.
But in terms of how you would actually hit that initial big chunk of calories, would you start fast? Would you level out? Would you hold the same pace throughout? Would you have a faster first row and perhaps go slow the second? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously because it's descending rep scheme, but not by much. It's just 50 down to 40. So, of course, you should be able to maintain, hopefully you're not falling off the bandwagon by that 40 the second row. But I think of watching these two guys go, I know Alex is holding about 1.5 to 1,600. Tammy is holding about a 1.3 to 1.4. She's actually a very good rower. I know she had more in the tank and she was hoping to catch him on the dumbbell. Slightly shorter range of motion just because she's shorter. But yeah, like I was saying before, I think you want to be able to hit the same pace on that second row as you did in the first. I would always start the row with a sprint start. That means a couple of short pulls just to get the average down, then settle into your pace. And, you know, again, it depends on how the dumbbell is for you. If you're really efficient like Al and Tammy both are here, and you can see Tammy coming off the row there and resetting the screen already herself, which just helps with the transition later on.
Yeah, I think it's important to note we've got a number of transitions happening here. You know, you're in and out of the rower twice. You're transitioning into that dumbbell. So placement in terms of where you set that dumbbell is actually important. So what we saw Tammy just do there, she got out, she pressed menu back, reset her rower straight away. Now remember, you can have someone assist you with this, but if you don't, that's a good strategy. So it means that you can just transition straight back into that rower Assuming that a 50 snatch, if you went unbroken, would mean that the row screen may not turn off. This is something you just have to practice yourself. Let's actually just talk about dumbbell snatch now. And so both our athletes here are opting for the muscle snatch. Are there any scenarios where someone may use something like a power snatch where they're adding a second dip to the movement?
Yeah, I mean, if you feel like, if you've exerted yourself a little bit too much on the rower, your pull's getting a little bit fatigued, your grip's going a little bit, you might choose to just rebend the knees a tiny bit to save such an aggressive pull overhead. Again, that depends on what sort of athlete you are, how good your overhead position is. The more you start to bend the knees, the more you require from an overhead position. But again, I think a lot of people will be trying to muscle snatch this. I think with a big chipper style format, it's better to use a faster cadence and then rest versus trying to hold on and then holding the dumbbell overhead, waiting a couple seconds and chopping and changing hands. Get a working set done, put the dumbbell down where you're totally unloaded, you're not having to work at all, pick it back up and go again if you're breaking, that is.
Yeah, okay, so we've seen Al transition back into that rower. So transition is really important. So watch Tammy here. She puts her hands on a handle, slides one foot in, slides a second foot in as she's going.
Yeah.
We talk about transitions all the time. So, essentially from finishing the dumbbell snatch, in 2 seconds, she's already pulling to get her first calorie. Now, a lot of athletes, if they haven't practiced this transition, I'd really recommend that you do. Watch this video back and just see how these two guys do it, because those transitions, if it's taking you 5 seconds to get in and out of the rower and you got 4 of those happening in a workout, that's 20 seconds gone in the workout where you're not accumulating any repetitions at all. So going back to dumbbell placement and row transitions, super, super important. Let's think about the movement coupling that we have in this workout. So in this first workout, we've got a row and a dumbbell snatch. We've got 2 hinge movements, 2 actually very similar movement patterns. Might that be a potential issue for any of our athletes?
Yeah, for sure. If you're not a good rower, you might start blowing up at the back if you start to use too much knee flexion at the bottom. There's a lot, like you said, a lot of hinging over. There's 180 reps of essentially bending the knee minimum. That's assuming you're getting 1 calorie per bend of the knees that you hit. So look, it's a lot of reps. Again, if a dumbbell is heavy for you, that's just compounding that as well. For these two, it looks light, it looks simple, but not many people are going to go this fast as these two.
Okay, let's talk about row paces then. We can't really see our athletes' screens right now. But
I know Tamer's holding about the same again, between like a 1.250 to a 1.4. I think Alex dropped off a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's, I think you look at these two athletes. Tammy is, she thinks about pacing a lot. She's a smart athlete when it comes to strategizing a workout. I'm not saying that Al's not a smart athlete, but Al's strategy definitely tends to be start hot and try to hang on as much as possible, which is probably why we saw a dip in his pace on the second row. Now, it's really important to remember what happens after this part of the workout is you have to go into a max lift.
Yep.
So, conservation of energy by being smart with your pacing plan is actually going to, hopefully pay dividends when you move on to the barbell movement next piece. It may not necessarily be something you can go all out at. Now, again, with that said, if you're like these two athletes, you're going to move through these dumbbells unbroken, you're going to hold a fairly fast tempo on the row, then you're actually going to have a little bit more rest before going into the thruster. So we'll see now how long it takes these two athletes to complete this, and you need to have some form of projection as to where you sit relative to these two athletes. If you're someone who's going to be finishing right on that 15-minute mark and have to transition into your thrusters, or your thruster I should say, then definitely pulling back your pace a little bit is going to be smart. It's going to allow you to execute on part 2 of this workout. Let's talk about the dumbbell cleaning jerk. So we've moved from a dumbbell snatch. Noticeable difference is obviously only one head of the dumbbell has to touch the floor now. Yep. What else are you thinking about, and what are you seeing with technique here?
Both Alex and Tammy are using like what we call a touch and go technique, not just off the floor but off the shoulder as well. So they receive a dumbbell in a power clean, so their knees are already bent, and they can use that bent knee to drive straight overhead. Often you see people almost execute a bit more like a barbell clean then jerk, where they clean, stand up, re-dip and go. And again, when you talk about 40 reps, that's a lot of time wasted. 1 second per rep, 40 seconds, almost a minute for someone who's going like these two are versus stopping at the shoulder and going.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Alex already finished ejected his dumbbell about 10 meters across the room, put himself in the pain cave. I think you'll see when Tammy finishes, it'll be a very different body language to what Alex is like. But again, these two, like you said before, are going to have a lot of time to rest and recover before they have to actually think about the thrusters. So we're looking at like somewhere in the 7 to 8 minute mark there. So that's a fast time.
Now it's a really fast time, but now they've essentially got a 1-to-1 work to rest ratio.
Yeah.
So it's taken them 7 minutes to finish. They've almost got basically 7 minutes before they have to think about thruster. And now I think with that kind of work to rest ratio for most fit folks in the CrossFit space, that's adequate time to be well enough recovered to be able to be hitting high percentage on that thruster, right? We've even seen people hit, PRs, off 2 to 3 minutes of rest and having to move into something hard. So again, like this is where we can use things like walkthroughs or warm-ups to our advantage to get an idea as to what kind of pace or what kind of time we're potentially looking at here. So Tammy's doing something interesting here. She actually just got back onto rower and she just decided to kind of just start pulling. Now, something to consider for sure, like Al's really in the hurt locker here. So, recovery style aerobic work is not something he's thinking about. He's just thinking about bringing his heart rate back down and feeling like he can be in some form of place to lift again. I shouldn't really bring this up, but this really brings back memories of CrossFit, the third workout in the CrossFit Open, where we had to go from a barbell
21.3 and 4.
That's right, yeah. And this is what Al looked like. And I really, really don't want to bring this up again, but I'm just going to bring it up anyway, that I beat Alex in both the barbell gymnastics portion and the max lift. Ed Haynes beat Alex Younger. So what are your thoughts on Tammy getting on the row here and actually just moving a little bit, Ant?
I think it depends. It depends how she's feeling. If she's just feeling like some aerobic fatigue, her legs are a little bit gassed, her arms a bit gassed, it's a good thing to do. Maybe just to flush the blood a little bit. I think if other people come off and their grip is completely blown out, their legs are completely smashed, then maybe just walking around in a circle is probably a better option.
Yeah.
You don't want to have to grip onto anything because you're going to go into a bit of wrist extension and then have to hit, obviously, a thruster. You don't want that grip being fatigued at all when you do that. It's also important to note that in that time where they're basically resting or waiting for the 5-minute window to hit their thruster, you can't touch the barbell and you can't load the barbell either. So you got to be really, really efficient of how you're going to spend your 5 minutes doing that work.
So I think Tammy actually does this, if I remember correctly. She actually picks up the dumbbell. Here we go. She's doing it right now. And she starts to take herself through a squat pattern. Now, remember, I think what we would probably find is that the overhead position will be fairly warm by this point. You've done dumbbell snatches and a clean and jerk. But we have not gone into a squat at any point now.
Yeah.
The hinge position definitely warmed up. So, pulling off the floor for the thruster might not be so much of an issue. But definitely just taking yourself through some form of a squat. So that can just start with air squats. That can progress to actually using your dumbbell, which you can use to kind of move through things like goblet squatting, maybe even moving through some single arm dumbbell thrusters. Yeah. Just to kind of start to wire the brain. Here's what Tammy is doing now. She's picking up that dumbbell. Yeah, and she's actually going to move through some thrusters just to work on that lockout position and kind of dial that movement in. Okay, while these athletes are preparing for this thruster now, what are some of your thoughts, Ant? You have 5 minutes to hit a thruster. Yeah. How many attempts are you potentially looking at here?
5 minutes, you're probably looking... again, it depends on who you are. The more you know yourself, you're probably looking at anywhere between 3 to 4. The less you know yourself, you're probably looking at 4 to 6 reps. Again, it just depends. Some people might put 40 on, but that was really easy, and then go 45, really easy, and just keep chipping away. Where more experienced athletes like these two are probably going to go something like a 60, an 80, and 100, then bigger jumps, and basically force themselves to rest a little bit longer. So they basically give everything and put all their eggs into that last barbell.
I think something to think about with a thruster, which differs from a clean and jerk, which we had in the open where I outlifted Al, is that with a clean and jerk, much more of a technical component to it. Now, the thruster for most people, the limiter is going to be the overhead portion, right? So it's not going to be the squat clean or the squat, but it's actually once you stand up from that squat clean, then being able to move the bar into the overhead position. Now, that's very much it's not necessarily a local movement, but there is, local regional fatigue of the shoulders and the triceps in the pressing of the overhead. Now, once those movements or those muscles go, they've gone. There's not like a jerk where we can just rely on things like timing and accuracy to lock out the arms at the right time. So you've got to be cautious with your loading here. We talked about anywhere between 4 to 6 sets, but I would say of those 4 to 6 sets, you probably only have 2 heavy sets, 2 challenging sets. So I would kind of be forecasting, a load where I know I can hit that, which would be challenging, and then giving myself enough time to then go for, a bit of a Hail Mary, a 50-50, which you're not maybe entirely sure if you'll be able to get.
Yeah, and I think with these guys as well, don't forget you got to have your collars locked onto the barbell for the lift to count. And you see this a lot at regional level, sanctional level, and games level, that people won't actually put collars on because they just know they're going to hit a very routine lift, which is basically, like you said, dialing in the movement pattern, just greasing the groove before they start getting to the heavier lifts. That's just something, obviously, it's just a bit of admin, and make sure you do it. But I think you'll see for the first 2 or 3, both of them don't put clips on and they just go through the movement pattern itself.
Okay, so when it comes to the thruster itself, athletes have a few choices. They can power clean the bar. They can set their feet and essentially then move through the thruster, the squat into the overhead. Or I think like we're going to see these athletes do, perform a squat clean, and then move straight into the thruster. Obviously, the squat clean, you've got a bit of an advantage. You can potentially, capitalize on that bounce out the bottom of the clean to move straight into the thruster. But of course, it definitely is a more technical movement. So this comes down to, technical proficiency of the individual, how comfortable they feel with the squat clean thruster. If it's not something you feel really comfortable with and you think there's maybe a higher degree of risk of potentially not getting it right, then stick with what you feel most comfortable with, perform a power clean, set your feet, and then hit the repetition. Anything to add on that?
No, not at all. I think just a bit of extra prep for the front rack position. As we know, the more you can hold a full grip in the bottom of that front squat, the more inclined you are to press, hopefully more overhead versus a released finger grip on the bar.
Yeah. So, okay, now we're about to move into the thrusters. I think it's really important that you have a rough strategy as to what your weight loads are going to look like. Sometimes these events are things you just have to kind of take as you go along, kind of basing the speed of the previous rep will dictate how much of a weight jump you go into the next rep. But definitely know exactly what you're going to start with. It may actually just be getting your hands on an empty barbell and moving through some repetitions there. Then going to something really light, which is, as you said, is just, you're just greasing the groove. It's a loosener to dial in the technique of the squat clean thruster, which they haven't done yet. And then you start to go into your bigger jumps based on how you're feeling. Okay, where are we at with time here? I think we're getting pretty close just by looking at Tammy's body language.
I think about
obligatory fist bump before they get going. Okay, so I think also, folks watching this, bear in mind both Al and Tammy are very strong, powerful athletes, in their relative fields. Tammy is definitely aerobically gifted as well. She's worked really hard in aerobic capacity. So what we saw here is that she had an ability to bounce back and recover pretty quickly in this workout relative to Al, who definitely, as a more powerful individual, has that capacity to really make things hurt, which he actually did in that first workout. Okay, so let's have a look at the weights. Actually, they're both opting for more or less the same load. Now, something that Al has done, he's slid in some small weights.
He only did it because Tammy did it, actually.
Okay, cool. So he put some small weights in on the inside of his barbell. Now, remember, there is no rules that state you cannot do that. But think about things like pound conversions. Athletes who are going to be doing this throwdown all around the world. Some folks are going to use kilograms. Some people are going to use pounds. As an athlete, you need to know the conversions of both of those. So, for example, knowing like a 225 for men is 102 kilograms. So those who are using kilograms, thinking about a 103 could potentially leapfrog you on that leaderboard. So, it's worth just spending time to write down and go through the maths yourself beforehand. Okay, so Al has just gone from a 60, I think he's at 61, he's gone to an 81 now. Again, neither of our athletes here have put clamps on the bar. They're just kind of moving through the repetitions. Something Tammy actually talked about before was that she was going to go from the hang position because it's her most comfortable squat clean. So what she was actually going to do was stand toward the barbell, lower to her hang, hit a hang squat clean thruster. She actually said in reflection, she got a little bit caught up in what Al was doing and ended up just squat cleaning it from the floor. But it's worth knowing that that is an option. If you prefer the hang clean and that's a stronger movement for you, more consistent movement, then you could definitely use that. Just bear in mind you're adding an extra stand to the rep because you essentially have to start with the deadlift. Okay, so again, Al's now hit 3 reps, and Tammy's about to hit a third. No collars on the bar for either athlete now. So these athletes are not thinking about these being reps that are going to contribute towards their final score, which means their weights they feel super comfortable with, and they know they can hit something heavier. So now Al is about to put on, his collars to get his first lift. I think Tammy just laughed there because she
got rocked back on her heels. And
I did miss that, yeah.
So she did slide the collars on for this lift. So when she went for it, she definitely got rocked back. I was actually sitting to the left of her. But that's a pretty easy lift as well from Tammy. So that would have been, what, 76?
76, yeah. Okay, so both athletes now moving on to rep 4 within the 5-minute window. They now have collars on the bar, so this is going to be their first credited rep. So, we're looking at Al here perform his squat clean thruster. Still, what I'm looking at there is the speed of the overhead portion. Not necessarily looking at a squat, unless, of course, you are someone who has a stronger push press than a front squat. Yeah. And 100%, that is not me, but there may be folks out there. You're going to be looking at the speed of that bar as it leaves the shoulder. Now, based on what that looked like for Al, was still really fast. There was at no point did the bar slow. There was no kind of struggle on the lockout, and the speed can stay pretty consistent. So for me, I'm watching that. I would think, you can be a little bit more aggressive with your next jump now. Yeah. So we're about to have a look at Tammy's 4th lift, and let's have a look here.
So you notice as well with both them in the bottom position, they're both real vertical in the bottom of their squat, which allows them to actually accelerate through the lift. For those that get pulled into, a thoracic round in the bottom position, those people then have to then fix the position through the lift, which actually decelerates the barbell. So they can't actually accelerate as easily as these two are. So that's just something to basically wow at, because it does definitely look a lot better when you're making the lift look like these two do.
Yeah, and I also think, it just goes back to the importance of the clean portion as well. Yeah. If your clean is pulling you forward and therefore it's pulling you out of position in this case meaning, forwardly inclined torso, which doesn't allow vertical drive in the bar, that's going to hamper your ability to thrust and more load. Yeah. So really just picking a clean technique you feel super comfortable with that can put you in the best possible squat position, which is going to set you up for success on that thruster. Tammy now going for 86 kilograms. We saw a little bit of slowing in her press out on the last lift. Oh, okay.
I think that's actually 91.
That is now
91.
Is that 91? No, it's 86 kilograms.
There's a 2.5 on the side.
Is there a 2.5 on the side?
I thought there was.
Okay, so Al as well going for his rep here.
1 kg.
Okay, so basically both athletes nailed that. Their final lift, in the last minute here, they both basically hit lifts. Neither of them failed, but what we definitely saw was, the lockout was getting slow for both of them. They might have had, another kilogram or 2 in the tank, but I would say both executed that really well and both be happy with those results.
Yeah.
Okay. Any last comments from you, Ant?
No, not really. I think if, like I said before, if you have the ability to hold on, then do try and hold on for that first 1A portion of the workout. Give yourself hopefully anywhere between like 3 to 7 minutes to sit down, recover, and bring your heart rate down, start to dial in movement patterns like Tammy did, and then turn all your focus to being fast with your loading on the barbell and being efficient in the squat pattern to drive overhead and thruster.
Yeah, I would just say last thing, for the warm-up as well as you're prepping for this event, it is important that you are addressing both portions of it. I would start with just a general aerobic warm-up. I then probably put a bit of time into just dialing in the thruster first. We want to be going into this first portion of the workout really feeling like we're aerobically warm and ready to rock and roll. I would, as I'm going through the warm-up, just have touches on a moderate barbell of the thruster so you're starting to feel what it's like to execute that movement under some level of fatigue. But then, yes, as you said, you're treating this as 2 different parts here. Yeah. What we're going to be doing over these 4 events is we want to build a complete set of fitness, a complete set of tests that's testing everyone's fitness and across a broad domains here. So what we're seeing here is, something between the kind of 7 to 15 mark, which is, very much the aerobic system and specifically the hinge pattern, and going into a form of absolute strength test or strength speed test, which we're using a thruster.
Yep.
Folks, good luck with this one. Remember, some basic things to think about. Make sure your phone is on airplane mode. You got enough memory on there and enough battery. Film your attempts. Have fun with it. You've got time to potentially hit this more than once as well. And we look forward to seeing you on the leaderboard.
See you there.